Good morning, everyone, and thank you for waiting so patiently in the lobby. I'm just going to give everyone a few seconds to come through and join the platform. So welcome to our dataset briefing to support our ADR UK Research Fellowship funding opportunity, or REF 2025. We've been running a series of webinars to support applicants, both to develop their research proposals, but also to understand the data sets applicable for use in this funding opportunity. And today we're very lucky and very fortunate to be able to share with you information on the Data First Cross-Justice System, England and Wales dataset. So the reason why we develop these funding opportunities is because ADR UK wants to enable policy relevant research for anyone using our ADR UK flagship dataset to have really beneficial kind of outputs on society, and our mission and our work is underpinned by the ADR UK flagship framework. And we want to enable and support new users to our ADR UK flagship data, and our programme is open to all accredited researchers. Because we've been running this programme prior and previous, we want to build on successful ADR UK Research Fellowships and their particular programmes of work, both from the data side and from their research objectives that benefit society. Importantly, this funding opportunity and our work is to inspire the use of ADR UK flagship data and drive research that benefits society. As I mentioned, these webinars are here to support you as applicants. So we want to explain the scope of the research funding opportunity and showcase the breadth and depth of research possibilities. We want to help researchers be able to develop feasible and robust research agendas based on the specific ADR England flagship dataset that they're interested in using. And in order to do this, we want to provide opportunities for engagement with those who are most knowledgeable and most informed on the flagship data set in question. Hence why we have this webinar today, and we're very fortunate to have James and Tamsin from the Ministry of Justice to explain the breadth and depth of the Data First Cross-Justice ADR England flagship data set. I'm going to stop sharing there and welcome the team onto the main platform. And I look forward to being informed, excited, and gaining a few more brain cells in understanding what the data set is about. And over to you guys. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Right, I will share my own screen and we can I think Tamsin's going to kick us off.
Brilliant. Thanks, James. Just check everyone can hear me.
We can, thank you.
Perfect. So yeah, James and I are going to present to you today a workshop on the Data First Cross-Justice System dataset. So we'll start with just basically an overview of how Data First works. So Data First is a program of data linking academic engagement and research. It's run by the Ministry of Justice and funded by ADR UK. We aim to make use of vast administrative data that's collected whenever individuals interact with the justice system. So by linking records of individuals and cases across the criminal, civil and family courts, plus prison and probation services, we can enable analysis of users' journeys into and through the various aspects of the justice system. So we can go from initial appearances in magistrates' courts through referrals to Crown Court for trial or sentencing, and subsequent time spent in prison or under the supervision of probation service, as well as interactions with family and civil courts. Records are linked using Splink, which is an open source probabilistic data linking package which has been developed in-house by Data First, and it determines when individuals appearing in different data sets are likely to be the same individual. To date, Splink has been downloaded more than 12 million times. The linked cleaned and de-identified data sets are then made available to researchers through two platforms. So it's either the ONS Secure Research Platform or the SAIL Data Bank. DataFirst has to date enabled over 65 research projects, including research within government, such as the BOLD programme. We've also had research from academic researchers across the country and from organisations such as the Institute for Fiscal Studies. So now I'll just give you an overview of the dataset itself. So here is an overview of all our datasets. So we have, that make up the programme to date, we have 5 separate criminal justice system datasets. Magistrates' courts and Crown Courts datasets can be linked on an individual level or a case level and contain information such as offence types, court dates and outcomes. These can be further linked on a defendant level to prisons and probation records, and also recently to the offender assessment system. This dataset provides details of a wide range of assessments, some general and given to the majority of offenders, and some more offence specific, which can be used to identify offenders' specific risks and needs. Other court jurisdictions can also be linked on a person level, including to multiple parties in family and civil cases. Slightly separate to this, we also have the MOJ DFE data share, still sits under the umbrella of DataFirst, and is a linkage of the Police National Computer with the Department of Education's National Pupil Database. The data share cannot be linked to the other DataFirst datasets. And if you are interested in this data share, there was a webinar on this in October that can be found on the ADR website. So this slide just shows you the coverage period of each of our cross-justice datasets. Coverage is thought to be relatively complete between 2014 and 2021, which gives us 8 years of comprehensive coverage for research. Time to monitor offenders returning to the system, reoffending, appearances in multiple datasets. For certain datasets, there are current issues we're aware of and would encourage you to discuss with us. For example, some of the courts have moved to using the common platform for recording case information, and this leads to a drop-off in cases for particular courts or case types from early 2020s. And the linking of individuals in the family court dataset is limited due to a lack of identifiers. Applicants wanting to access family court datasets, we encourage you to discuss proposals with us. So to support analysis, there is a cross-justice system linking dataset available. This dataset enables person-level linkage across the 7 datasets and also includes a case-level linking table for connecting the magistrates and Crown Court data. So here in this slide, you can see the key features of each dataset and how they link together. So some of those key features are all events within civil and family court cases, plus all parties to cases. The safety and custody incidents within the prisoner custodial journey dataset, information on both perpetrators and victims, and incidents of self-harm. One of the few examples of where we can provide details on the specifics of an individual's experience within the system. And then there's the new offender assessment dataset, which has risk scores, needs, and specialised assessments based on offence type. So this slide gives you an example of what we can do with the cross-justice system dataset and an example user journey. So it's interesting to think about the kind of information we can learn about a person and their interactions within the justice services once data has been linked across the criminal, civil and family court, prison and probation services. You can really start to build up a picture of a user's journey. In this case, it's a fictitious individual called John. So the first time John appears in our datasets is as a teenager when he is involved in a family public law case and taken into care. He next appears in the magistrate's court as a defendant, and his case is committed to the Crown Court where he receives a custodial sentence. We can follow John's time in custody, including information about the prison, safety incidents, and spells on licence or recall. OASIS data on offender risks and needs would add greater context to John's situation at the time, and this is now available. When John is released on license, he appears in the probation data, and we can see information about requirements or conditions on his release, such as electronic monitoring. And after John is released from prison, his landlord makes a claim in the county court, and John is named as a defendant in a possession case. So it really builds up a big picture of, a user's journey through the system.
Thanks, Tamsin. So I'm just going to pick up now to discuss some of the kind of current and ongoing sort of uses of the data set, just so we can kind of demonstrate some of the uses of the data. I will admit I've spotted a small continuity error here, because a couple of slides ago we had over 65 research projects and suddenly we now have over 50. So apologies for that. There's obviously a slight error there in putting the slides together. But we have been able to facilitate a wide range of projects that have been approved for access to the data first cross-justice data sets, and these focus on a wide range of areas. This includes the impact of specific policies or interventions. So examples there include the 2014 Offender Rehabilitation Act that changed some things about how kind of licensing worked and how easily offenders could be recalled to prison. There is another project that has looked at the impact of the implementation of universal credit. Other projects have looked at alcohol or substance misuse and its links to crime, or investigated sort of racial disparities in either the types of offending or outcomes for offenders. Other researchers have looked at particular types of offending. Examples there include serious and organised crime, drug trafficking, or sexual offences. And within that, researchers are typically looking at who are the offenders, where do they come from, how are they being dealt with by the courts, prison and probation systems. In all these cases, and this kind of applies to any application really, it is important to think about how you will define the cohort that you're investigating. Quite often you might find that it's not possible to directly define the group that you're interested in. You may need to think about other measures that can act as a bit of a proxy for defining your cohort, and to think about just how robust and reliable these are and what impact that might have on any findings. I'm just going to cover a couple of specific bits of research as well. So this is from some work that we did in-house, actually, at the MOJ, using the first linkage of the magistrates and Crown Court datasets. So this is a couple of years old now, but it does still contain some interesting findings. So the figure on the left, the kind of a sort of pie chart, shows the number of defendants who had an appearance in the magistrates' courts in 2011, and the proportion of those who returned to court at least once up to the end of 2019. And that shows that over half, sort of 56% of defendants appearing in 2011 had at least one reappearance within that time frame. And it also shows that there's a subgroup of really quite prolific offending within that. So 18% of those defendants had 6 or more returns within that time frame. A further 12% had either 4 or 5. The figure on the right shows the proportion of defendants returning broken down by their initial offence for which they appeared in 2011. And you can see there that returns were most common for those who were initially appearing for either theft or robbery offences. Around 80% of those defendants reappeared at least once, while sexual offences had the lowest return rate, which could be linked to either the overall sort of reporting rate for sexual offences being quite low, but also the likelihood of receiving a longer initial custodial sentence for those offences as well. So there is simply less opportunity for those individuals to reoffend. Also from that, from the linked criminal courts report, so the heat map on the left-hand side of the slide shows the relationship between the initial 2011 offence and the reappearance offence. And the darker diagonal line through the middle shows you that most offenders tend to return for the same types of offences, so suggesting quite a high degree of specialisation. You can also see from the vertical sort of darker line towards the left of the image, there's also a reasonable likelihood of any offender returning to court for a theft offence as well. The figure on the right just shows the overall sort of count of offences in each category, and just highlights the dominance of sort of summary offending, so low level, both motoring and non-motoring offending in magistrates' courts cases. They make up the vast majority of cases in that area. This is some external research that's been carried out using our data. This is actually a previous ADR UK Fellowship project. This is from Dr. Kitty Limperopoulou, who I believe is now at the University of Plymouth, who investigated ethnic disparities in the criminal justice system using our cross-justice data sets. And that research found significant ethnic disparities in sentencing outcomes after controlling for defendant, case, and court characteristics. So specifically, Bangladeshi, Pakistani, and Black Caribbean groups received significantly longer sentences than the white British group. And sort of further to that, ethnic minority defendants from Black, mixed race, Chinese, and other white groups were more likely to be remanded in custody by the police than their white British counterparts. Those from ethnic minority groups appearing in the magistrates' courts were more likely to be committed to the Crown Court for trial compared to white British defendants. And among defendants appearing in the Crown Court who entered a plea, ethnic minority defendants had higher rates of a not guilty plea than white British defendants. Among those who were convicted in the Crown Court, defendants from Black Caribbean, Chinese, and other white groups were more likely to receive a custodial sentence. These findings have been shared with the Shadow Data Governance panel, and the Deputy Senior Presiding Judge has also expressed an interest in the findings, and there's ongoing discussions about the implications here for judicial training and guidance. The research was cited in the Tackling Racial Disparities 2023 report, which documents efforts to identify and address racial disparities in the justice system in response to the Lamy review. It's just also worth pointing out that this slide was put together by Kitty as part of a data comic. And one of the things I think has been part of previous ADR sort of fellowships is kind of finding slightly different and slightly novel ways to express kind of findings and to share outputs. So this is an example of that. To the last part of this section, again, another piece of in-house research that we've done earlier this year, sort of work by some members of our team on what we have termed prolific young offenders and exploring their kind of characteristics. For the purposes of this report, we've defined a prolific young offender as any 18-year-old with a conviction as an adult in 2019, so that's around 10,000 individuals, who had received 3 or more prior convictions between the ages of 10 and 17. We use 2019 as the kind of cutoff year there because that allowed us access to the entire sort of criminal history of these individuals as children, so we could see all of their offending before they turned 18. And just a few kind of headline findings from that, 27% of prolific young offenders were found to live in the most deprived 10% of neighborhoods. That was compared to 21% of non-prolific young offenders and around 11% of 18-year-olds overall. 27% of prolific young offenders also had at least one custodial sentence prior to the age of 18. 22% had their first conviction before the age of 14. 70% received their first conviction between the ages of 14 and 16. And finally, 11% of prolific young offenders had 10 or more youth convictions before turning 18. So this suggests, kind of similar to the findings of the Linked Criminal Courts report, that there's a subset of particularly sort of criminally active individuals, even within this kind of select cohort. Just moving on to cover some of our kind of research priorities, basically, and what we're looking for, I guess, from this kind of round of applications. So we would welcome applications that are sort of focusing on sort of policy focused questions around four kind of major themes. It's worth saying that this is by no means an exhaustive list. We would welcome applications from outside of these kind of broad areas, provided that you can demonstrate their sort of policy relevance. And I would encourage you to also take a look at the recently updated MOJ areas of research interest. A new version of the ARIs has just been published, and I would encourage you to take a look at that. But yeah, four broad categories that we would invite applications related to. So first of all, cross jurisdiction. So integrations and journeys across the justice system, and the sorts of things we might mean by that is a sort of project focusing on understanding how problems might interact and reinforce each other, how individuals might move through different sort of courts and different areas of the system as they attempt to resolve those problems. Who are the repeat users of the justice system? Does involvement in other areas of the justice system, I guess specifically maybe the non-criminal elements of the justice system, have any kind of influence on sort of criminal offending or reoffending? What works to enable effective outcomes across the justice system and to reduce reoffending? And how do individuals in the system vary and compare across courts and across different areas? What factors are driving any disparities and outcomes that there might be at different stages, and any kind of factors that impact in somebody's outcome. The second sort of main heading is reducing reoffending. So understanding the characteristics and the needs and the risks of offenders. How do an individual's needs change over time within the criminal justice system? What characterizes individuals that stop offending? We probably spend quite a lot of time focusing on those who sort of reoffend, but is there something that sets apart those who kind of stop offending, and is there something that we can learn from that as well? And what are the risks and needs of different offender groups? How do these change over time? Do these change over time? And does that affect their likelihood of further convictions? The next sort of headings, we would also be interested in the effectiveness of things like electronic tagging, sort of monitoring, alcohol abstinence requirements in protecting the public from harm. So within that, we would be interested to know if there are specific groups, individuals, circumstances under which these kind of monitoring requirements are more effective. Are there specific groups of individuals or particular circumstances under which under which these are particularly effective. What combinations of sort of probation requirements and conditions are most effective at improving compliance and in reducing reoffending? Obviously, it's often not. Offenders often have kind of more than one kind of a requirement that they have to comply with. What are the sort of blends of requirements that are particularly effective? And finally, we'd be interested in applications related to the Safe Streets mission, so to advance our understanding and generate new knowledge in support of the current government mission for safer streets. We'd particularly within that be interested in applications looking at offender characteristics and needs associated with sort of knife crime, violence against women and girls, and antisocial behaviour, and with reoffending across these areas. We'd be interested to know if there is overlap between people who have committed these offences and other offences. Are there common offender trajectories across the different types of offences, and what are the patterns in how those offenders interact across the justice system? I'll just stress again that it's obviously not an exhaustive list, but it's just to help people, I guess, get started and to generate some ideas. Just finally in this section, some notes on just kind of understanding the research potential of the data, what it can do and what it can't do. So it's fair to say that administrative data can only help with certain types of questions. So broadly speaking, what we can do with data first is address questions about who is interacting with the justice system in what ways, the processes and timings involved in that, and hard outcomes such as sentencing or repeat appearances. The kind of data that we've got cannot provide insight into things like unmet needs and an individual's circumstances and experiences of engaging with justice services. So we can tell you when they interact with the system and for how long and what the outcome is, but not how an individual kind of feels about that kind of information. And also just because of the time frame for which the data sets run, we can't currently provide much information on real kind of longer term outcomes. The data sets focus on sort of justice system users, so that is defendants, prisoners, sort of parties to family or civil court cases. We can provide very little information for questions related to the judiciary, court and prison staff, sort of legal professionals, that kind of thing. And we have very limited data available on some sort of public users, so for example, victims and witnesses. So data first is a good window into the big picture and small subsets. So we have data on all defendants, all cases, offenders in custody or under supervision in England and Wales. So in that sense, it's very broad. And what that allows you to do is to kind of drill down into quite niche groups. So more specific ethnicities, offence types, case types, and hopefully look at them in quite granular detail. I think I'm handing back to Tamsin now for the next section.
Brilliant, thanks, James. So in this section, we'll cover how to apply for access to the data sets and also what we look for in applications to help you with that. So the first bit is feasibility and resources. So we strongly encourage applicants, first of all, to talk to us, discuss your ideas with us, your proposals, and then we can advise based on our knowledge of the data. And if we have the answers, we can help you. If we don't, we can facilitate contacts with data or policy experts that might be able to help you with the feasibility of your projects. There are, so you can contact us on that email address, sorry for that. There are data catalogues and a data first user guide available through our main webpage, which you can find on the government webpage. This also has information on previous in-house publications, ADR UK Fellowships, and there's further links to an application form and list of approved external projects to help you see what has been done previously. Just to note, the OASIS data catalogue is only available on request at the moment. So if it is OASIS that you're interested in, please contact us and we can send you a copy of that. There are also now synthetic versions of all our data sets have been recently made available through the UK Data Service. So this allows potential applicants to test linking, look at variables, etc. Although the results will have no relevance to real world or actual data, it gives you an idea of what is in the data and, you know, can help you with the feasibility of your project. So to apply for the access to the cross-justice system data set, there are a few steps to go through. So you can apply for it either through the ONS SRS or the SAIL data bank. Applicants need to be an accredited researcher. So we recommend you begin this process as soon as possible, and you can actually do this process in parallel to your research application. So to access data sets from the ONS SRS, applicants need to be accredited under the ONS accredited researcher scheme as well. So to become an accredited researcher, there are some forms you need to download listed on the UK Statistics Authority website, and you submit them electronically to ONS. To be eligible to be an accredited researcher, you must have either an undergraduate degree or higher, including a significant proportion of maths and statistics, or be able to demonstrate at least 3 years quantitative research experience. Should you wish to access the data via the SAIL data bank, you can either complete the ONS accredited researcher scheme, a UK Research and Innovation Medical Research Council e-learning module, or other equivalent training. And you must also provide evidence of a research career via a CV belong to a recognised institution. Further information on safe researcher training can be found on the SAIL data bank website. And there's also further guidance on all of this is listed on in the Data First user guide on our government webpage. So this slide is covering timelines for applying for access to the data. So application times can vary significantly, and the biggest factor in this tends to be the quality of the initial application we receive. We'll touch a bit more on this in the next slide. But the first stage is our team. So we are the Data First Research Academic Engagement and Comms team. So we will assess an application for its feasibility, its clarity, and all the necessary documents have been provided. The application can go through an iterative process between our team and the applicant to fine-tune methodology, definitions, and the proposed cohort. So it can go back and forth between us before it goes any further. And we might also look into approximate numbers for your cohort in the data set and advise if we think that you might encounter disclosure problems. So the earlier in the process you engage with our team, the earlier we can start to iron out if there are going to be any issues. Following this, when we believe the application is at its stage that it can be submitted further, applications that request for use of HMPPS data require approval from 2 panels. So they need approval from the Data Access Group and the Data Access Governance Board. And applications for access to HMCTS data is just by the Data Access panel. So these panels currently roughly meet monthly, and a project requiring both HMPPS and HMCTS data. So for example, the Data First Courts and Prisons dataset would require approval from both these panels. The panels assess the proposed methodology, bringing in operational or data-specific knowledge, as well as any ethical or disclosure concerns. And they will also ensure that the application conforms to any rules they may have for data sharing, For example, the data access panel does not permit research that directly compares court performance or the performance of individual judges. An application can either be approved subject to some caveats or amendments, or returned to an application for amendment. Depending on the extent of the amendments required, a panel may agree to approve changes by correspondence or wish to conduct a full panel review again. So obviously, if it needs to go back to a full panel review again, that would then wait until amendments have been made, we've agreed them, and it can get back to whenever the next panel is. The process will typically take a couple of months. It has been done in one before, but obviously the more applications we have, the more there are to review, and some applications have taken significantly longer, depending on how many times we need to go back and forth between us and the applicant just to get it to that level. So this slide is that stage where we believe it's ready to go to the panels for approval. So a project should, as a minimum, have a completed application form. So completed as per our guidance we have. It should have a full list of required variables with a justification for each. With the list of variables, less is more. So the view is that you don't ask for anything you don't need. So that's why we need a justification for each. We also need proof of ethical approval from the relevant institution. And we've also found it helpful. Some applicants have, in previous projects, have provided a proposed timeline or flowchart of the project or something else just to outline key milestones of the project. This allows plenty of time for exploring, and in the timeline, ensure you leave plenty of time for exploring and understanding the data, because this always takes more time than you think. Although accessing synthetic data now in advance can help with this, which is why we've made all those available. So an application should be clear. So what is the cohort you're investigating? How do you intend to define it? And do you have any idea of the rough size of the cohorts you're intending to study? You may not have an idea of this, that's absolutely fine. Also include a breakdown of the project by key research questions, chapter headings, etc., with how you intend to complete each one. Clear, straightforward descriptions of methodology with jargon or technical terminology limited as much as possible, although some technical terms are likely to be necessary. Your application will be reviewed by a wide number of people, not all of whom are statisticians or data scientists. So while we can always ask colleagues with greater expertise for views on proposed methodology, the simpler it is written, the easier it is for everyone to understand. And also to include an understanding of any sensitive issues you may come across in your research. So are you requesting any sensitive variables? And if so, please be sure to clearly justify why you have included these. And do you expect to encounter any low numbers of records in your analysis or other data protection disclosure concerns? And if so, show that you clearly understand these and you have thought about how you will address them. For example, combining fields so that they do not fall under, the disclosure of low numbers, and etc. I think I'm passing back to James now.
Yeah, thanks, Tamsin. So yeah, just a couple of slides for me to wrap up. So first of all, what can you expect from us as a data first team? We're obviously keen to facilitate as many different research projects as possible, covering as many different areas of interest as we can. So we are available to help and advise at every stage of the application process, assist with any back and forth between yourselves and the review sort of panels that Tamsin touched on in the earlier slides. We obviously can't write your application for you, but we will do everything that we can to ensure that your project is as ready as it can be for that review. We provide detailed supporting documents, including, as we've touched on already, data catalogs, a user guide via our webpage, and thorough synthetic data to aid with the testing of code and the linking of records and that kind of thing. We will also provide ongoing assistance throughout a project with sort of data queries, including the meanings of any variables, help investigating any data quality issues that you might encounter. We are not necessarily experts in every element of this data, so if we don't know the answer to a question, we will look to find a colleague with the necessary expertise to assist you and advise as well. We can also provide assistance with output review. So any project output being taken off the secure kind of platform that you're working on must be cleared by our panel, and we can aid with this as well. So several members of our team will be involved in the review of any output, along with our academic lead and colleagues from the data access panel, just to ensure that they are in line with the approved project, and to provide feedback on kind of methods and the framing of any conclusions and that kind of thing. And you can think of this as a bit of an informal kind of peer review process that we hope is helpful as well as necessary. We can provide opportunities to share your research. So we've organized kind of several events in the past. We had our first Data First showcase earlier this year for sort of users of our data. And we can also help to facilitate engagement with the sort of policy focused colleagues. We also occasionally go out to present at sort of universities to potential applicants. And we usually have current or former researchers along to these events as well to share their work. And again, this isn't an exhaustive list of what we do. If there's something else that you think we can help with, then do please ask. So just in conclusion, and just to wrap up, what we hope that you will take away from today. So first of all, please do engage with us as early as you can. The more we know about you, your project, what it is you plan to do, the better placed we are to advise you with regards to sort of feasibility and help preparing your application for panels. We're also better placed to ask questions and engage with colleagues on your behalf because we have a better understanding of what it is that you are trying to do. Please take time to understand the data and for data exploration within your project plan. Make use of our data catalogs, the synthetic data, and our team to advise you on what is and what is not included in the data and what is and is not feasible. Administrative data is a great resource, but it has pitfalls, and unless you're already familiar with our data, you are likely to spend quite a significant amount of time simply getting a feel for it. So please do factor this into your planning as well, because it's very easy to underestimate the time that takes. So less is more, usually in terms of both data and in terms of kind of research questions. One of our key responsibilities is sort of data minimization. So only sharing that which a researcher really needs to carry out their work. So that means that we cannot provide any data set for which there isn't a clear justification within the application. If in any doubt, remove it. We do allow sort of project amendments when a project is underway, if you find that there is something that you need to add in at a later date. And for research questions, a similar thing applies. We would rather see a few detailed, specific questions with a clear explanation of how you plan to answer them, rather than a whole raft of questions that we don't necessarily think you will have time to address. And finally, and probably most importantly, we are as a team here to help. So if you have questions, please do ask. And even if we can't answer them ourselves, hopefully we know or are able to find somebody who can. So yeah, that's it from us for the main sort of presentation. We're happy to invite any questions now if people have them, and it would thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, James and Tasman. That was fantastic. I have learned so much, not just about kind of like the data itself, because I was aware I run the current fellowship programs, but the processes behind it, who kind of sits behind this process and what you're looking for. It was very, very clear. And I hope everyone in the audience has been really informed by it and can kind of see A to Z the whole way through everything now, because I can. I've scribbled down lots of notes to myself to kind of keep record and understanding of it going forward. So I may come back to you on separate things just from our functionality, but that was brilliant. Thank you very much. I'm aware and I have seen lots of questions pop up, so I'm going to hand over to Steve, who's going to be leading on this section, because I'm sure some of them will be open for discussion as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks. And yeah, just to echo Lola's comments, it was very interesting and very enlightening. So thank you both for that. We do have a number of questions coming through. So I'm going to go all the way back to the very first question that was asked. And this is from John. How detailed are the safety and custody variables? Do they include subcategories such as self-harm or drug-related incidents?
So the safety and custody is, as far as I'm aware, fairly kind of thorough in that regard. So you do have categories for sort of self-harm and sort of violent incidents and that kind of thing. Was the other specific? Was it on sort of drug-related incidents as well? Was that the other element of the question?
Yeah. So do they include subcategories such as self-harm or drug-related incidents?
Yes, so they are kind of broken down like that as well. The other interesting thing is with the sort of safety and custody information is that it's pretty much the only part of our data set where you'll have any information on the victim of an incident as well. So in the case of a violent incident, an assault or something like that, you will have information on both the victim and the perpetrator, which is kind of unique within our data as well.
It's interesting. Yeah, brilliant. Excellent. Okay, I'll just plow on with these then. Next question is from Dara. Would the data set allow us to identify cases where there was a diagnosis of mental illness? And also, is it possible to identify cases involving individuals experiencing homelessness?
So in terms of the kind of diagnosis of mental illness, the two things. So Tamsin knows far more about the Oasis data set, I think, than I do. So I might let Tamsin say something about Oasis in a second. But the other thing I would say is there are within the Stale data bank, I think there is opportunity to link to kind of medical information as well. So there may be something in that area that you could do. But otherwise, I'll probably let Tamsin answer the Oasis element of that.
Thanks, James. Yeah, so I think the Oasis data set wouldn't confirm a diagnosis of mental illness, but there are questions related to have they ever experienced certain health conditions, for example, mental health illnesses, in the past, or are they currently experiencing them? So there is some flags there, yes.
And just following up on the homelessness part of that question, is it possible to identify cases involving homelessness?
So I know there was a project related to the BOLD program, was there not, that looked into homelessness and did that make use of some of our data, but I can't remember specifically how they did that. I'm kind of looking across the desk at Georgina here to see if she has an answer to that.
She's just come on screen,
question,
so I'm hoping that's the answer.
Yeah, so within the OASIS data set, there are some indicators in the data set in some of the questions around whether the offender is currently of no fixed abode or in some sort of transient accommodation, or if the offender is living in suitable accommodation. So there are kind of a range of different questions related to accommodation and that sort of thing. So that would kind of potentially be able to indicate and infer some sort of homelessness indicator within that. And also as well, yeah, like Tamsin said as well, it's got some stuff on mental health within there, like whether they've been given sort of medication for mental health and things like that, which obviously then you would infer that they've had a mental health diagnosis. So yeah, so hopefully that would be able to help. But as we said, the OASIS data catalogue is not available publicly at the moment, but if you need one, then get in contact with us.
Excellent, thank you. I hope that does answer your question, Dara. Okay, we've got another one here from John, and this is a question about if a fellowship proposal requested or required linkage between other flagship data sets, for example, RAPID and maybe ONS mortality data, would that be possible? And the reason they would like to do that is to analyse links between offending court outcomes, socioeconomic status, or impact and mortality. And I think there's quite a few questions sort of along the lines of linking this particular data set with other data. So perhaps you could explain a little bit more about maybe what's permissible and what isn't, depending on the TRE that the applicant will be working in.
So yeah, I don't think you can so other kind of data sets within the SRS, you won't be able to do any kind of additional kind of connection between those. What we can allow, and what some of our researchers have done, you can request to import if there's other kind of public domain kind of data that's of kind of relevance to your research. You can submit a request to bring that into the SRS and to incorporate that into the data that you're working with. So there's a particular project of ours that I'm kind of thinking of that that wanted to look at the impact of things like sort of local sort of job vacancies and local amenities like sort of public transport in the area into which a prisoner was released, and what impact that had on whether or not they went on to reoffend. So there's publicly available information on that they requested to bring into the SRS to incorporate into their research. But we can't link outside within the SRS. We cannot link outside of our own kind of data sets that we've provided. I think that answers that question, but do let me know if it doesn't.
Yeah, I think it does. So supplementary data may be possible. Survey data, for example, within the SRS.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. I hope that does answer your kind of two-part question, John. And they're coming in thick and fast now, so I'll try and plow on. How is geographical location recorded? Stephanie is interested in the individual data, and it would be useful to know what is recorded, such as court names, local authority, for example.
Yeah, so most of our data sets will have both a local authority and the more granular LSOA codes. They are linked to the address provided by the individual. So that's to do with where they reside, not necessarily where the offence has taken place, which obviously, depending on what exactly you're investigating, can be quite an important distinction. And then yes, you'd get I think it tends to be court codes, but then within the lookups that we provide, you can obviously relate those to the name of the court that's heard a particular case. Quite often, obviously, because the LSOA codes are so kind of granular, that's really like neighborhood level. We do often need quite a clear justification for the use of those, because that's when you can quite often run into sort of disclosure issues. So we would, I think, most of the time would point people towards using the local authority level codes unless there is a particular clear justification for using the more specific address information.
Okay, excellent. I hope that answers Stephanie's question there. Michael was asking about e-trail data being linked across justice. I think we've just answered that in your previous question. But there's another one here very quickly on synthetic data. Do you need to be an accredited researcher to access the synthetic data sets?
So the new, I haven't been hugely involved with the availability of the synthetic data. My understanding is that there are, and again, I'm looking in Georgina's direction here. Is there more than one version of the synthetic data, a kind of lower and higher fidelity kind of level? I feel like that was talked about at one point.
I can jump in, James, if that's helpful.
Sure.
Yeah, so we hold the synthetic data that we've published is all on the UK Data Service, and I think the link was provided in the slides there. To access those, you don't need to be an accredited researcher, so you just need to register for an account with the UK Data Service, and there are some terms and conditions there, so an agreement that you need to kind of read and sign for how you're allowed to use the data. But yeah, you don't need to. So the idea is that you can anyone can go and look at that. When they're just when you're just thinking of ideas, and it can really help you kind of work out whether the data that you want to be there, work out whether it's there and what form it's in, and help you develop those ideas. I can pop in the chat the link to how to register for an account and everything.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Thank you, Claire. Okay, just looking at the clock and the time running down, I've got a quick question from Tracy, going back to linking data or this data set with other data in regards to sale. And you mentioned health data. Some health data might be available. Could you just give us a bit more info on what that might be? My understanding is that there is things like such a GP information within sale that could be linked.
Yes, and there's a whole range of sort of Welsh Health Service data, I think, that's available to be linked through sale, including kind of GP records and that kind of thing. So they're obviously quite extensive. Applying via sale is probably one of the. We kind of mentioned a couple of specific data sets and that kind of thing, where we'd advise people to kind of contact us and have a chat with us about what it is you're intending to do kind of prior to sort of kicking anything off. And I would say applying via sale is probably one of those kind of things as well, because if you are again, if you are wanting to link to kind of additional records and that kind of thing within sale, we need to just be careful again about encountering, a sort of very low counts and kind of risk of re-identification and that kind of thing. So that is something I'd encourage people to, again, just engage with us on very early.
Georgina, I think you want to come in.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that point, I've just put the link to all the kind of the data catalogues for the different data sets available in SAL. The link is there in the chat. So if people want to look at the different types of health data that's available, that's included in there. And obviously as well, do have a chat with SAL in terms of some of those like health data sets as well, because obviously we can't actually access those data sets, so we can't sort of look at feasibility on those. So we can only give advice on the data first data set specifically. So yeah, do get in touch with SAL colleagues as well.
Yeah, that's a really important point, Georgina. Definitely, there is a process to accessing data within SAL, as well as a cost that you'll need to include in your application. So definitely do engage with them, because they will kind of help you with the feasibility of your projects as well. So yeah, brilliant. Okay, I'm looking at the time, and I know there's more questions that are coming in. Please don't worry if we haven't been able to answer them here. What we will do is we will take everything away, and we will publish these questions with written answers on the ADR website, which will sit alongside the recording of this session, and obviously the slide decks that you've all seen as well. So rest assured you will get your answers, but in the meantime, please reach out to either us at ADR or these guys in the MOJ with any questions that you do have. And at that point, I think I can probably pass it back for a quick wrap up from Lola.
Thanks, Steve. I have been very... Can we see my slides first of all? There we go. I was just saying that was a really interesting discussion. It was really nice to get into the nitty-gritty elements of what's possible and what's not possible. And please do carry on sharing thoughts, feedbacks, anything to do with this data use. And if you have any questions, the whole team, us, the Ministry of Justice, are all here to help and advise. Just to flag that we still have a few webinars that are coming up over the next week or so. We have our Community Catalyst research agendas on Thursday, and we have our rapid data set next Tuesday. And if you've missed anything, there are recordings available on our webpage, so you can watch them back again. There is our email address on the screen in case you have any specific questions or you need further directing. And again, the slides will be available. Can I just thank the speakers again for coming today and giving us their time and their knowledge and sharing their insights with everyone on the call, and anyone who's watching the video after. And again, to Georgina and Claire for joining the discussions after. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to close the meeting, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you all.
Thank you very
you.
much.
Bye.